What is the most hilariously incorrect thing a teacher told your class? Story 1. When I was in kindergarten, our homework assignment was to ask our parents what country they were from so the teacher could show us on the globe where it was. Younger me was so excited. I went home and asked my mom where she was born, and she told me her family was from Malaysia. All day, I practiced and practiced. I couldn't wait to share this info with my teacher. When I went to school the next day, I told my teacher that my mom is from Malaysia. With a look of utter disappointment, my teacher informed me that Malaysia was not a country and I needed to ask my mom again. I was crushed that my mom would lie to me like that, or that she was wrong. Either way, little me cried to her and told her that my teacher said Malaysia is not a country. So Mama was not happy that I was told this and came to school with me the next day to give the teacher a piece of her mind. To this day, I've never seen my mother get so red in the face while yelling at my teacher. After she was through, I quickly got an apology and a geography lesson on where Malaysia was. I had a teacher tell me the same thing, only it was Poland. So I had to do a report on Jamaica instead. I was in 5th grade. It's not like one of the first things you learn about World War II is that Germany annexed Poland for their first strike. Look, folks, teachers aren't infallible, and especially, elementary school teachers, they're teaching all these different subjects. They can't know everything. However, teachers, if you're presented with something like a kid says they're from Malaysia, their family's from Malaysia or Poland, maybe you could just double check on that before you say, nope, you're wrong, that's not a real thing, because that... I can't even wrap my head around why you would so confidently say something like that. Story 2. We were taught in science that our tongues have different areas of taste. Had to do an experiment where we put a sugar cube/lemon on different parts of the tongue, etc. Supposedly, we had a sour area, a sweet area, and so on. So putting lemon on the sweet part of your tongue would mean it wouldn't taste sour or bitter. Well, I spent that whole experiment thinking it didn't matter where I put it, it all tasted the same. I said that, and the teacher looked at me like I was being purposefully disruptive. The rest of the class said it worked. I figured something was wrong with my tongue. Years later, I heard they debunked that theory. Edit. Just wanted to add, a lot of you are mentioning kindergarten. We were taught this in high school. I'm being serious. Granted, it was early high school, so ages 12 to 13-ish, but still. I'm English, by the way, so maybe in England we learn fake science later in life. The rest of the class said it worked, probably the placebo effect. I also tried it out as a kid and was super annoyed that it didn't work, so I just ate all the ingredients. Edit. I did the experiment at home. I'm not as cool as you guys think. There are a number of these kind of misconceptions that have been debunked that teachers still teach that I hear about. Because teachers aren't an encyclopedia of all possible knowledge. They have their own things that they've, learned wrong, these misconceptions that they will just pass on to you as facts because it was given to them as facts. And so it's unfortunate misinformation, but again, if you're a teacher and you're telling people this stuff, then you should maybe look into it, especially in high school if it's on a subject that you're supposed to be well-versed on. Story 3. I grew up in England, but did part of my high school in the US. One of the teachers there organized a thing where we were volunteered to read stories to elementary school kids. After reading my story, I guess the teacher felt the need to make note of my accent to the class. She asked me to tell the kids where I was from. I said, I'm from England, and she did that thing teachers do when she repeats the info to the kids. But she says, did you hear that, kids? She's from England. That's in London. I tried a little bit of a correction. Actually, I'm from England, and she just repeated to the kids, yes, kids, England. That's in London. I was too shy at that age to call her out on it, but it still makes me cringe to this day. England is my city. Story 4. My college sociology teacher said that criminality is genetic and that if one or both of your parents are criminals, so will you be, regardless of environmental factors. Was really pleased with himself because he thought nobody could prove him wrong. Informed him that I was adopted at birth because my biological father was in prison and my mother couldn't support me, and I have never committed any crime. I wouldn't even drink underage. He got flustered and angry and said, "You haven't yet, but you will." Joke's on him. I'm a good boy. That right there should have gotten him fired. What an effer. I'm not gonna lie, this teacher sounds like kind of a piece of crap. Like, that's not a thing. A lot of crime, it's environmental. It has to do with so many other things. Biology, I'm sure, can play some small component in making you more inclined to certain behaviors, but what a dink. Story 5. While teaching Japanese history, my teacher was entirely convinced that the self-termination of a Japanese samurai was called Sudoku instead of seppuku. Your teacher is correct. The shamed samurai carved 81 squares into his chest before meticulously painting the numbers 1 through 9 on his chest in a difficult-to-discern pattern. The samurai would often die partway through the process. To restore his honor, the family would have to finish the pattern before burial. Story 6. Science teacher during the intercourse ed portion of the year said all penises are the same size when it counts, i.e. when erect. Classmate then asked why boobs can be different sizes, but the penis is the same for all men. Teacher then said she didn't know, and that would be a question she would ask St. Peter when arriving at the pearly gates. I have a feeling the science teacher never saw more than one erect penis. Maybe that's what her husband told her. Look, honey, I know Daryl is 8 inches flaccid, but when he gets it going, it's 4 inches too, I promise. Story 7. Computer teacher told us if you use cut on an image on a website that it will be removed from the website and will upset the website maker, so be sure to use copy. This is amazing. Wonder if someone was messing with them and they believed it ever since. It was back in like 2003. Don't think the teacher really knew what he was talking about most of the time, but got assigned to teach the class. Teach as in pop in Mavis Beacon CDs. Okay, yeah, no, that totally makes sense that it was back in 2003. I graduated in 2002, and I can tell you that teachers back then who taught computer classes, 9 out of 10 of them did not know how computers worked. There was one teacher who taught a computer lab where she said, "Don't move the mouse too fast, because it'll overload the computer's brain and kill it." Yeah? Story 8. The teacher put materials from plants and materials from animals on a board. We could not convince her that wool was not a plant. Did she think sheep were a vegetable or something? She was openly ridiculing us too. I am fairly sure she thought that wool was made from cotton, as cotton wool is, but she put a Hanks to the actual wool on the board. I grew up on a farm, incidentally. I was not mistaken about any of this. She was just wrong. Story 9. My grade 6 teacher told me that fatigued was in fact not a word when I used it in a short story and insisted that I look in the dictionary. Found it in the dictionary in about 2 minutes and proved her wrong in front of the whole class. My 7th grade English teacher told me that scion wasn't a real word because I had encountered it in a fantasy book. It was part of the discipline for them to make up cool-sounding words for things. Which is true, except for the part where they still mostly use, actual words. Or that words invented for a book become a part of the lexicon. For example, atomic bomb, robot, and cyberspace. Hey teachers, maybe don't tell students that something isn't a word until you've looked it up for yourself, so maybe you don't end up looking like a total mook. Because, come on, it's not that hard. I know that it might say, like the scion one, I sort of get. That's an uncommon word. The teacher that said fatigued isn't a word, that hurts me. Story 10. We were playing a game where you had to name a thing beginning with each letter of the alphabet. I said orangutan for O, and my cookery teacher stopped and shouted, No, orangutan is wrong. It starts with an A. Have you ever been to a zoo and seen one? She wouldn't let me prove it, and I lost the game because of it. It's been 7 years, and I still can't forget it. I just want to know what seeing one has to do with learning how to spell its name. They all have name tags that state their species. Have you not been to a zoo? Story 11. When transferring schools, teacher, so you're from Mexico. Me. No, I'm from New Mexico. Teacher. Got it. So you're Mexican. Was the student visa program difficult? Me. No visa needed. I'm from New Mexico. It's between Texas and Arizona. Teacher. Did you live near cartels? This was an American history class in high school? My wife moved from New Mexico to Washington State in middle school. The number of classmates who asked her if she had a green card or if she spoke Spanish is humorously depressing. How can teachers be so dense? Like, God damn it. Story 12. That Tsarina was the first name of the wife of Tsar Nicholas II of Russia and not her title. She understood that Tsar was Nicholas's title and not his name, but could not apply the same logic to Alexandra. She insisted that Tsarina was her given name and no amount of arguing would change her mind. I'm still annoyed about this 20 years later. I remember when I found out that judges are sometimes given the title of justice. I was about 8 and there was a judge character in a book I was reading. It said something like, Justice Thompson replied. I thought, wow, what a coincidence to be named Justice and end up becoming a judge. I articulated those thoughts to a teacher who then called me an idiot. Story 13. Once a horse closes its mouth, its jaw locks and it is literally impossible for a human to open its mouth again. I lost it. I worked and lived around horses my entire life. All you do is put your finger in the side of the horse's mouth where they have no teeth and voila, they open their mouths. Like, how do you think a bit is put in their mouth, stupid English teacher? She told this fact to our class when she told a story about her friend getting her hand broken trying to feed a horse, and the horse got her hand stuck in its mouth. Maybe the horse just bit her. Story 14. One of my first teachers told the class that the sea is blue because it's a reflection of the sky. That same teacher later in the year told the same class that the sky was blue because it was a reflection of the sea. We lived on land. The sky should be green or brown. The sea, being only a reflection of a reflection, should be copying that green or brown. I pointed this out, began to present the correct answer, and was promptly sent out of the room for being disruptive. If any of you are wondering, and you can look this up, I believe that water is blue. It's extremely faint and only really perceivable when there's a whole lot of it, but it's kind of blue because that kind of light gets trapped in there. I'm sure the reflection from a blue sky helps the ocean look blue on big clear days and stuff, but yeah. Story 15. Deoxygenated blood is blue. Oxygenated blood is red. That's why your veins look blue, but if you draw blood, it is red. I don't know how many people thought this was true, but I swear I heard it multiple times from several teachers during elementary school. I thought this was true until you just told me it wasn't. Story 16. Not really hilarious, but definitely dangerous. She taught us inflammable meant non-flammable. After correcting her immediately, she made me sit at the back of the class and go through the dictionary to find the word for non-flammable after refusing to believe me and having embarrassed her. I was only 10. Inflammable means flammable? What a country. Okay, so fun fact, inflammable and flammable, I believe, technically have a distinction. Flammable means something that you can set on fire. Inflammable means that something that can burst into flame without a source of ignition, like it's a, unstable chemical or something. I think the terms are generally interchangeable and non-flammable has become a more common parlance these days. But yeah, and it has roots in like Latin and stuff. I looked this up a while ago. I think this was mentioned in another video and I made a butt of myself. Story 17. Had a history teacher who said you could easily shoot a longbow a mile. I told her she was wrong, and to prove a point, she phoned my dad, a longbow instructor. She then straight up lied to the class and said he'd agreed with her, assuming I wouldn't find out, I guess. Step 1. Attach the longbow to an artillery shell. Story 18. That a Big Mac from McDonald's overwhelms your stomach with so much of everything that it doesn't register you've eaten anything, and that's why you get hungry again so quickly after. I'm overwhelmed by what you just said. I'll go get a Big Mac. Story 19. In 7th grade, when we were studying the Holocaust, my teacher told me that the swastika was made when Hitler took the cross and broke its points to show the world he was above God. That would be a much more bad A explanation, but definitely not true. Story 20. English is my second language, and during English class, one of the students asked her what did lion cub mean. She said it means lion cube. No, it doesn't make any more sense in my native language. When you freeze a lion to put in your drink, then... Story 21. My economics teacher said that simple interest and compound interest were the same thing. I spoke up about it in class, and she took me into the hallway and told me not to disagree with her again. Don't teach something incorrectly again. We've had a few threads about, teachers and stuff like that, and there always seems to be at least a couple stories about teachers who are like, "Ugh, don't you dare correct me in class, how inappropriate." Teachers, if you're not willing to learn, you're not a good teacher. The end. Story 22. You don't need to know about periods yet because you aren't 16. I was 12 and had had them for a year. I feel like talking to young women about bodies is something that only really started getting taken seriously in the past 20 years. Before the late 50s, it was deemed to be improper to use the word pregnant or to be pregnant in public. Story 23. Sound moves really fast, so distance doesn't matter. You can hear something just as well from across the room as if you were sitting next to the noisy thing because it takes less than a second for the sound to reach you. Story 24. Sodomize instead of cauterize the wound. No thank you. Doctor, it's quite the wound you've got there. Unzips pants. Just relax. I'm a professional. Story 25. She showed us the flag of the United Kingdom and said, "This is the flag of America." We had to substitute try and locate Russia on a map of the U.S. Story 26. I had a teacher that swore that Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad was a physical railroad that ran under the ground. Story 27. That caffeine isn't a drug, apparently because according to her, you couldn't get addicted to it. Oh man, did she not see that Saved by the Bell episode? Not only is it addictive, it's even regulated by the Olympics. They treat it like any other drug in your system. I'm so excited! As someone who drinks just way too much coffee and strawberries and cream Dr. Pepper, I can confirm that caffeine is indeed addictive, and I have a problem. Currently, that problem is that I don't have strawberries and cream Dr. Pepper. 0, of course. Story 28. 7 billion people died in World War II. 200 million Russians included. Especially impressive seeing as there were only about 2.5 billion people alive at the time. Story 29. My science teacher freshman year told us there was air in space. She also told us that that's how rockets are able to fly. The fire behind them burns air in space to push them forward. Story 30. A teacher told me Kenya was in West Africa and then argued with me when I told her that I'm from Kenya and she is wrong. Story 31. All lights are outfitted with cameras for the government, so we shouldn't use them. What a dark world he must live in. Dark has been his dream of late. Story 32. If a bug was in an airplane, it would not be able to fly forward because it could not fly faster than the plane was moving. They were relatively wrong. Humans can fly at the speed of sound. Confirmed. Oh, come on, Teach. Come on. It's not hard. Because then, as these people have rightfully said, if you were in an airplane and you just jumped, then you would just right to the back of the airplane. You know, if physics were wrong. Story 33. That dogs evolved longer faces so they could smell things around corners. I think my dog evolved even more because his nose is at a right angle. Yeah, this one is my favorite. Story 34. How to count by twos. 2, 12, 22, 32. Story 35. That the word Q didn't exist. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.